First big shock in Monte Carlo, Berrettini knocks out one of Alcaraz's main rivals. Who said Monte Carlo was going to be predictable? The first big shock is already a reality. Alexander Zverev, the top seed, has been eliminated in his debut by a resurgent Matteo Berrettini playing like in his best days. This result not only shakes up the tournament draw but also changes the game for Carlos Alcaraz, who now sees a clearer path to returning to world number 2. Will he be able to take advantage of this unexpected opportunity? Let's find out. Monte Carlo wasted no time in proving why it's one of the most unpredictable tournaments on the circuit. Alexander Zverev, who came in as the main favorite in the absence of Jannik Sinner, was stunned in his opener by an inspired Matteo Berrettini, who turned around a match that had seemed lost after a dominant first set by the German. The final score, 2-6, 6-3, 7-5. More than 2 hours of absolute intensity ended with the fall of one of the title favorites. Zverev, who is still struggling to find his best form this season, missed a key opportunity to consolidate his place at the top of the ATP rankings. The match started well for the German, who took the first set with ease. But in the second, the Italian raised his level, serving effectively and managing to destabilize Sasha's game. The decider came in the third set, where Berrettini showed patience and composure to break at the decisive moment, the 12th game. For Matteo Berrettini, this victory is a breath of fresh air in a period of ups and downs. The Italian not only knocked out one of the tournament favorites, but also sent a clear message: he's once again a dangerous opponent on clay. His power, sliced backhand, and aggressive serving were key to the win. The crowd at the Court Rainier 3 witnessed a performance that revives the Italian's presence on the tour. But if anyone truly benefited from this upset, it's Carlos Alcaraz. The Spaniard had a potential showdown with Zverev lined up for the later rounds, something that now won't happen. With the German out, the road to the final has opened up significantly, and most importantly, if Carlitos manages to win the Monte Carlo title, he will reclaim the world number 2 spot in the ATP rankings. However, the pressure hasn't disappeared. Alcaraz still has to face Francisco Cerundolo in his opener, a tough and experienced clay court player. But opportunities like this don't come around every day, and Carlitos knows it. The absence of Jannik Sinner due to suspension and now Zverev's exit make Alcaraz the tournament's main favorite alongside Novak Djokovic, whom he could only face in a hypothetical final. Berrettini, for his part, moves forward with confidence and could become a threat to other big names in the draw. His next opponent is yet to be determined, but after toppling the tournament's number 1 seed, anything seems possible for him. The dynamics of the tournament have completely changed, and what once looked like a tight battle among favorites has now turned into fertile ground for surprises. And as we know, on clay, no match is won until the last point is played. Zverev's elimination in his Monte Carlo debut not only shakes the tournament but also reshapes the battle for the top spots in the ATP rankings. Carlos Alcaraz now has a golden opportunity to reclaim the number 2 position and establish himself as one of the dominant forces on this clay court swing. Berrettini, meanwhile, is once again giving his fans hope with a level of play that once seemed lost. And Monte Carlo, as it does every year, reminds us that nothing is written in stone. Should Sinner's absence have been an advantage for Alcaraz? Many thought so. But Carlos himself has a very different perspective. Ahead of the Monte Carlo Masters 1000, the Spaniard broke the silence and sent a clear and direct message: the pressure to be number 1 has killed me. Carlos Alcaraz opens up to the media and admits that the fight for the top spot in tennis is not his main priority right now. What's going through the mind of the world number 3? Let's find out. Carlos Alcaraz has already arrived in Monte Carlo, and in a very special way, training side by side with Novak Djokovic. A high-level session that did not go unnoticed on the circuit and marks the beginning of the clay court season for the Spaniard. However, beyond the tennis, what really caught people's attention were his statements after practice, where he opened up about the pressure he's been under since Jannik Sinner was suspended. The Italian, current world number 1, won't be competing until the Rome Masters 1000, leaving a void at the top of the rankings that many expected Alcaraz to fill. However, the reality has been quite different. An unexpected loss in Miami to David Goffin and inconsistent performances in Indian Wells have stalled any attempt by the Spaniard to climb back to the top. Rather than hide it, Carlitos admitted that this added pressure has done more harm than good to his performance. In statements collected by The Independent, Alcaraz was blunt: "A lot of people tell me about the chances to be number 1 now that Sinner isn't playing, and that pressure, probably, has killed me in some way." A statement that leaves no doubt about the mental state of the player. Despite being just 21 years old, the Spaniard has learned that in elite tennis, hitting the ball well is not enough. you have to know how to handle expectations. Currently, Carlos Alcaraz is 3,610 points behind the Italian in the ATP rankings, a gap he himself considers insurmountable in the short term. I'm too far away from him. All I want is to play. That's the goal, he concluded. A shift in mindset that could be key to regaining form and, above all, enjoying being on court again without the burden of chasing the number one spot. The Monte Carlo Masters 1000 now stands as a new beginning for Alcaraz. Far from putting pressure on himself with rankings and titles, the Spaniard wants to focus on rediscovering his tennis on clay, his favorite surface, where he has already achieved great success. His first challenge will be against Francisco Cerundolo, a tricky opponent in good form. What's clear is that Alcaraz has matured, and his words show it. He doesn't want to fall into the trap of thinking only about trophies and points. He prefers to focus on the game, on his personal development, and on leaving behind the ghosts of the American Tour. Monte Carlo will be the first major test of this new mindset. Carlos Alcaraz has sent a clear message: he doesn't want the obsession with being number one to steal the essence that made him a global phenomenon. The external pressure, rather than pushing him forward, has made him lose focus. But now, with his feet on the ground, literally and metaphorically, he wants to enjoy, compete, and, why not, start a comeback without anxiety. The road to the top is still open, but for Carlitos, the true goal begins with one word: play. Carlos Alcaraz has kicked off the clay season with the Monte Carlo Masters 1000 as the first stop on his calendar. After an American tour without titles in Indian Wells or Miami, the criticism quickly came. However, far from crumbling, the Spanish tennis player has delivered a lesson in maturity by speaking about the moment he's going through and, especially, about the constant comparisons with the legendary Big Three. In recent statements to GQ magazine, Alcaraz was clear: "It's a compliment, but I'm Carlos Alcaraz." And while his youth might suggest a lack of experience, his accomplishments tell a different story. At just 21 years old, he'll turn 22 on May 5, he's already won 3 of the 4 Grand Slams: Roland Garros, Wimbledon, and the US Open. An impressive record for someone who hasn't even reached the midpoint of his professional career. It's precisely this early success that has fueled comparisons with Roger Federer, Rafael Nadal, and Novak Djokovic, 3 names that define 2 decades of world tennis. Despite his media impact and on-court dominance, Alcaraz doesn't get carried away by the noise. In fact, he has stated that he's not obsessed with matching or surpassing these icons. "I'd love to sit at the same table as those 3, but it's not something I'm obsessed with," he said. His focus is on building his own path, enjoying the process, and, above all, improving every day without losing sight of who he really is. In times when comparisons abound, that authenticity is pure gold. The truth is, Alcaraz has stayed true to his essence amid the media storm surrounding him. While many see him as Nadal's natural heir, he prefers to let his game speak for itself. "I try to make my own way," he insists. And that path has already led him to write golden pages in the history of Spanish and world tennis. His aggressive style, positive mindset, and ability to adapt to different surfaces make him a unique talent. But above all, it's his maturity that surprises the most. Alcaraz has also been featured in a recent documentary that shows his routine, his environment, and how he handles the pressure of being in the spotlight. Seeing the Mercian both on and off the court offers a more human look at someone many already consider a future legend. In that context, he was also asked about the challenge of surpassing the numbers of Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic, a pressure that could crush anyone. Yet he takes it calmly and philosophically, showing that his biggest goal isn't to win everything, but to enjoy the journey. Though the numbers are still far from those tennis titans, Alcaraz's trajectory is that of a rising star. He's had brilliant moments and more difficult ones, like this start to 2025. But even in adversity, he keeps growing, learning, and strengthening his identity as a player. He doesn't need to be the new Nadal or the Spanish Djokovic. He's Carlos Alcaraz. And that's enough. Because what he brings to tennis, both on and off the court, is already becoming priceless. Comparisons may be inevitable, but they're not always fair. Carlos Alcaraz understands that perfectly. At 21, he's building an impressive career, but doing so with his feet on the ground and his heart set on his own path. Admiring the Big Three doesn't mean living in their shadow, and Alcaraz proves that with every word and every shot. While some want to see him as the heir to an era, he prefers to be the pioneer of his own. Without obsessions, without pressure, and with his passion intact. The future of tennis may have many names, but Carlos Alcaraz has already made it clear that he wants to write his without imitations. Francisco Cerundolo hasn't made a direct provocation, but his message is clear: He hasn't come to Monte Carlo just to show up, he's here to win. With 2 previous losses to Alcaraz and undiminished hunger, the Argentine arrives on the clay of the Principality with a firm intention to spring a surprise. And that attitude, plus his current form, make this one of the most anticipated matches of the first round. Carlos Alcaraz, for his part, will need to be more alert than ever. Not just because he needs to solidify his game on this surface, but because on the other side of the net he'll face a fearless opponent, motivated, and with the kind of game that can trouble anyone. The message has been sent. The threat is real. And the battle is about to begin. Will this be the time Cerundolo manages to beat Carlos Alcaraz? Or will the Spaniard once again show why he's one of the best in the world? Let us know your opinion in the comments and tell us who you're rooting for in this great match. Don't forget to subscribe to follow all the action in Monte Carlo and throughout the clay court season. Here, tennis is lived with emotion, analysis, and plenty of passion. See you in the next video.